We are stoked.
I'm a terrible sore loser. I don't follow the rules.
All the bearded guys seem to lie. Yeah.
There are rumors galore.
I am so up and down on my emotions right now.
Retain salary.
Okay. Where there is smoke, there is always fire, etc., etc., etc.
You don't do it.
Been there, done that.
And we'll get into it later.
They know crap about hockey.
Come on. Well, I laugh it off.
I have no issue.
Here's the thing, though. I have nothing to do.
I'm okay with this deal.
There was no other option.
So now you have nothing.
You already blew it.
Win now, win now.
It paid off.
I will eat my pants.
Hey guys, it's Two Guys in Hockey Talk. I'm Pavel the Cat Zygmunt, and I've got my number one co-host, as it says on his hat.
Hey, it's Reverend Ev, back at your service with another day at Two Guys in Hockey Talk. I just want to welcome my co-host, Pavel the Cat. Folks, he's still trying to put behind him the Oilers' past Saturday night debacle against the Flames. He's trying to get it in his rearview mirror, but he still believes the Flames owe him an apology for the smackdown they left on the Edmonton Oilers last Saturday night.
More like the Edmonton Oilers fell flat-footed in terms of their defense and goaltending, and really didn't decide to show up during the third period. I got to watch the party with some friends, at a bit of a party with some Calgary Flames fan and Edmonton Oilers fan, and then there was one neutral fan. He was a Toronto fan. So, he was able to keep us at bay, keep the peace, as they say.
Well, I watched a game with my sister and my mom. My mom, the Flames fan. My sister don't give a crap. And, it was that neutral place. So it was fun calling out penalties. Definitely, it was a fun night of entertainment, whether you hate it or love it. So, all right, buddy.
Excellent. Well, welcome back. Grab a bevy. We are in episode 27. We're lucky to be back here again with some great content of hockey. There's a lot of news around the NHL and some outside the link. You're going to talk a little bit later about the CHL. You've got some insight there and a few players. But first, absolutely. we want to thank our sponsors, ASAP Network. They're an all sports network. They're really cool. Check them out on Facebook. Make sure to like, subscribe. Make sure to also like, subscribe. Check us out on our Facebook page, on our Twitter, #hockey_2. Check out Revenev at his Twitter handle. If you want to find me on Instagram, I got cats. Who doesn't love cats, especially when they get up shenanigans? They're really fun. Evan, why don't you start us off and tell us what's going on?
All right, buddy. Hey, we mentioned we want to talk about a plethora of players. So why don't I start us off with Rasmus Daleen? Interesting. There's been a lot of Buffalo fans and a lot of media all over Rasmus Daleen saying, he's a bit of a late developer. And so what I want to do, and you guys make sure you just comment down below if you're following, you got an opinion. It can be totally opposite of us. You're perfectly allowed to be wrong. It's okay. And so Rasmus Daleen, people are trying to say, well, look at where Adam Fox, for example, of the Rangers, right? Just say Adam Fox is a superstar defenseman. I want everyone to recognize that Rasmus Daleen came into the NHL at 18 years old. And so he's been in the league for 4 years. He is 22 years old. I want everyone to remember this. Adam Fox did not start until he was 23 years old. Daleen still has a high ceiling still to get to. So
100%. And I think one of the things that they've struggled with is consistency. Consistent coaching. Yeah. They've gone through a few coaches. The superstardom essentially fell on Jack Eichel. That whole drama really took away from everything else in Buffalo. I mean, they've been playing well this season. Will they compete for a playoff next season? Will remain to see. But when they get Owen Powers in that lineup and potentially when you have that 1-2 punch with him and Daleen, I think is good. The one thing I like about Daleen is he's a big, tall guy, and he can use his presence a lot. And he reminds me of Erik Karlsson out of San Jose, kind of Karlsson light. He's got that speed, that quick transition game. He's got that long stick. He can really get in there. He can be a gritty player. And I think he's really thrived in the last year under the new system in Buffalo. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of him. And don't be surprised if he gets, potentially some future votes in the Norris candidacy. So.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Hey, so here's a question. Owen Powers, is he left or right defense?
I believe he's a righty, but I can double check.
Okay, Owen Powers, where do we got here? Owen Powers, sorry, I went by Powers. So as we go in the check, he's a lefty. They're both lefties. So what's going to happen is one going to move to a right. Now, I'm not as familiar. If you guys follow Buffalo, is that going to mean that can Daleen move over to the right, or has Powers done a lot of that in Michigan? If you guys are really familiar with these guys, I'd like to see them on the top pair, but they're both left-handed defensemen.
I think it'll be a 1-2 punch, like I said. I think it'll be Daleen on the top line and Power coming in. He's gonna have that second line.
The first year makes sense, but when both those guys are going, I can't imagine someone playing second, and you're still going to be paying them a good dime to play on that second, Okay, so hey, there was a really big topic, and it came out of Toronto. Toronto's complaining away, Maple Leaf him, yeah. No, actually, if you're just a fan of your team and your guy gets sucker punched from Taylor Hall from behind, good old Taylor Hall, rising up controversy again. So I want to take a moment and I just want to talk about this. So I'm going to give my thought, and then Pavel's going to we haven't talked about this and get our input on this. So this is my thinking. There was a cross-check, okay? I want you guys to think about this. So Ilya Lyubushkin cross-checked, like literally, this should have been a suspendable cross-check. 100%. Like that's the same thing Kadri did in the playoffs and was suspended. Now, he has no history, I get it. So he's cross-checked. Now, first of all, you just cross-checked a guy and you turned your head. Is that unexpected? You just think that the guy's just going to let you just cross-check him into a corner. So this whole thing that he was sucker punched and he had no idea it was coming, well, then he's not a very intelligent player if he doesn't know what's coming. Now, this is not on him because I think he did. And it was, Will Smith slapped Chris Rock harder than Taylor Hall hit Lyubushkin. And this was nothing like a Bertuzzi. And I get it. I'm fine with the fine. And if there had been a suspension, I'd be greatly disappointed. In fact, I was that Lyubushkin didn't get a fine. What's your take?
Well, I think Will Smith can really hit hard. He played Muhammad Ali, so he really, he's got some force there. So I don't think anybody wants to take that on. But in all seriousness, I watched the game. It was highly entertaining. It was wild. Toronto really got up ahead and really opened up the game and was able to score quickly. I was worried a little bit about the defense for Boston, but I agree. There was a cross-check that was kind of missed. Taylor Hall kind of awkwardly did turn, which is why it looked worse for wear. He did get a fine of $5,000. Yeah. So, it's nothing, it's peanuts for these players, for Taylor Hall. I think the problem is that whole game got out of control quickly, and that was poor game management, and that goes back to what reffing and what we've talked about with reffing in games, where if you can't get a handle to go now, what kind of game Boston plays. And I'm sure Mike Smith, who may be watching, we can tag him and let him know. He'll talk about how they're the big bad Bruins and they get away with a few dirty plays. And as you heard on I don't know if you heard on the Boston broadcast, they were yapping about the refs left, right, and center and really complaining about everything. Again, both plays were very uncalled for. There were some injuries out of the game. Toronto lost 3 guys. It could have been worse. Thank goodness it wasn't. But the refs need to manage that game. It's a sucker punch. Yeah, it's not the best. He did punch him with his glove, which I think is a little bit worse.
It was open-handed. There was an open hand. It wasn't on close.
It looked like a punch to me, but okay. Either way, I think the crime fits kind of the punishment. People are going to be calling for more of a suspension. Mm-hmm. If you can't dish it, don't. If you can't take it, don't dish it out. I think that.
Yeah, you got it. You came back. You pulled that one out quick.
Thank you. I got some things right.
And I think something that's really important to consider there too, though, in that situation, is that Pacioretty had actually punched from behind, sucker punch, Chris Letang, who has had concussions and a stroke and stuff, and he wasn't suspended and he wasn't fined. That's also my point. That's that consistency that you're talking about, Pavel, that we are not seeing across the NHL.
Yeah, that being said, 10 years ago, that play just goes on. Life goes on. Maybe the ref tries to break it up. I mean, there used to be only one ref on the ice. So, there's a little bit more puck management now. They're not going to get everything. It's a fast-paced game. What we see through bird's eye view, of course, is different than what the refs see on the ice, and sometimes you can't see everything, right? I mean, that's, but what do I know about hockey? So who's our next victim?
So we'll talk about seeing. Now, there's a few players that you've just highlighted in bits and pieces over the last few weeks. I haven't had a chance to comment on that we're going to touch in on. Jeremy Swayman, you were just talking about him in the last couple of weeks, how he's really turning into a player. So I want people to catch something here. There is something special about Jeremy Swayman. He is 23 years old. He has 19 wins, 9 losses, 3 overtime losses with 3 shutouts and a .920 save percentage today. Now, I think they have their goalie of the future. And some people are going to say, well, it's just kind of a fluke. It's not enough games. No. Hey, he was .945 last year in 10 games. And the same was said, and we talked about this on our show about Thatcher Demko in the playoffs during that time in the bubble. And Thatcher Demko is a number one. And I'm telling you, Jeremy Swayman's the same. And I'll tell you what I like about him. Jeremy Swayman tracks really well. He tracks that puck, and he doesn't give up a lot of those rebounds. And he is very athletic with it. I am telling you, Boston, you should be excited. There's a lot of other teams around the league that would like to have their own Jeremy Swayman. How do you go from Ras to Swayman in only like a year and a half? I mean, that's amazing that they're able to hold a number one goalie and keep him in place because it looks good for them in the future.
100%. And I think what's interesting about Boston is they had a plethora of goalies that, that have been successful there. I mean, Tuukka Rask, albeit for all the injuries and his body can't take any more this year, and him trying to play a few games and just retiring from the game, as we noted, he was just not there. And I mean, he's taken them quite a bit. Tim Thomas back in the day when they won the cup with him, playing as well as he is. And then even in the last little bit when Boston traded Vladar to Calgary, I didn't think Vladar was that bad, but clearly they didn't see, or they saw something in Sweeney because of the fact that they got rid of Vladar, right? And then they signed Linus or Linus, you guys can correct me, Olmark from Buffalo. They didn't trade for him, but that's where he played last year, to the team, to that big contract. And now you wonder, are they going to trade him, are they going to trade that big contract? So it's definitely interesting. They are very lucky. The one good thing about Boston, and they've always played a very good structured defensive model, regardless of who's played there. And I think that's what's helped a lot of goalies be successful in that system. You talked about it last show about, Marc-Andre Fleury and his comments about, playing a certain structured role, and that's why he likes Minnesota, as you said, alluded to Edmonton and Toronto. Same thing with Boston. I think that's the same thing, right? Like, so it just comes down to how your team plays in front of you. I don't think it's a fluke. I think this goalie is for real. It's a little quicker than expected. And it helps the workload. I think they have a 1A, 1B punch. And I wouldn't be surprised if he would be potentially starting in the first round of the playoffs.
Wow.
That's a bold prediction.
So interesting. So I'm going to come back to him in just a moment, back to Boston. It's interesting that we did talk about the Fleury situation and where not to play, right? In places like Toronto or Edmonton because of the defense. Interesting. I think Saturday night's game between Calgary and Edmonton proved the point. I think Fleury's pretty happy. Okay, I digress. Talking about previous, so Rask, I wonder how Toronto is feeling because they're the ones who drafted in 2005, same year as Sidney Crosby. They drafted Rask, and he was traded to Boston in 2006, where he actually went for his entire career. So I'm sure Rask was happy he ended up in Boston.
I'm pretty sure they don't need any more bad decisions returning to them as nightmares anymore. I think Toronto has had enough of them. They've struggled, and right now they're struggling a lot because they lost Peter Mrazek in that game last night, and a lot of their goalies in the AHL are also feeling the e-bug, and so they're kind of without their goaltenders right now. And Jack Campbell, we don't know when his timeline is, but you want to bring him back, just in time for the playoffs that he's ready, because he's technically your number one, unless, Toronto fans, you guys can chime in if you believe it's somebody else, right? If it's Skalgren, right? Like, is that who your number one is? I mean, he could be your 1B now, right? If you're going to need it, right? And Joseph Wool was still there, Michael Hutchinson, so Toronto's definitely, was in the market for a goalie. There was definitely some rumblings. I know there was some conversations that got out, but we'll see how it goes. Yeah. So I think Boston's very lucky, and I think they need to hold on to that.
I think the two Kyles should dress up in a pregame between Chicago and Toronto. Good, those two original 6 teams, and they should dress up in their hockey gear and go out just before the game for the pregame, puck drop, and they can drop the puck and then drop the gloves and just get it on. Good old fashioned hockey game, man.
So who's Lachushkin and who's Hall in that scenario?
So talking about Rask in 2005, that was the year of the lottery and Sidney Crosby. So we posted on our Facebook page. So again, if you're not familiar and following us on our Facebook page, you could be on ASAP or you could be watching us on our YouTube. On our Facebook page, Two Guys in Hockey Talk, we post a lot of things throughout the week ourselves, and also Patrick Conway, our Russian content writer for Russian hockey. He's got some great stuff that he chimes in on here and there. So we put it up. Let's just take a moment and talk about how historic this is, that Sidney Crosby stands up there with Wayne Gretzky and Gordie Howe when it comes to career year, like in his career, straight years with a plus 1 point or plus point per game average. He's tied with Howe for 17 straight years, except Howe, his first year, didn't have a point per game. And he's only 2 seasons of matching Wayne Gretzky. That means if the next 3 seasons he can get a point per game plus, then Sidney Crosby will have the number 1 spot. Isn't that amazing?
It's pretty incredible. Can you say that 5 times fast?
No. So I don't know how Crosby feels about 2005, but we have Ovechkin and Crosby, and both of them could beat a big record that nobody thought would be beaten. One for goals and one for points per game average for more than 19 straight seasons. Wow.
100%. Both have been elite. I mean, Crosby is probably up there in top 5 best players of all time, given what he's been able to accomplish. Can't deny his impact on the game.
Yeah.
In Pittsburgh, in Steel City, and what he's done to that franchise. I mean, if people recall when that, Mario Lemieux took over that franchise, it was, financially struggling and it wasn't doing so well. And they were looking for ways of renewing the fan base, the love for the game in Pittsburgh. And, he did that. And now you've got 3 Stanley Cups later and still defying odds and competing and potentially going to another playoff round. And we'll see how it goes. Could this finally be one more cup for Crosby? Because that could definitely cement his legacy as probably one of the greatest of all time in hockey. And that's 100-year history, if not more.
And there's going to be a lot of arguments in the years ahead. Again, the dead puck era, because he was a part of a mixture of that. But what's really, really what's interesting about Crosby, he's staying up there in all those statistics. But I'm sure if you guys are honest, even if you hate Crosby, he's probably one of the few superstar points per game, goals, you name it, goal scorer, whatever, that actually plays defensive hockey. He is solid. And when you talk about leadership, there was talk about someone like Mark Messier, how great a leader he was. I would go on record that I actually think Crosby could go down as the greatest leader, hockey leader of his teams, and no matter where it was that he played on any team out there. So yeah, I mean, hats off to him, man. Good for Sidney Crosby. Happy for the Pittsburgh Penguins that they still got a superstar that's still lighting up the lamp on an ongoing basis, man.
It just pains me to agree with you. Like, it really hurts my bones. Like, I'm really getting like chest aches just from the fact that I have to listen to Evan and think, yeah, Evan's right. You know, I got to get you a plaque. Evan's right. Or like get a balloon machine to go off every time you say something right. So,
well, hey, I feel the same. I should get a ping pong paddle that says Pavel's right. The cat is right. You know, it's just like, oh boy. We're sorry tonight. We just seem to be agreeing. We didn't pre-plan this, but let's go to some more record breakers. What's your thoughts on Jonathan Huberto this season and what kind of year he's having?
Oh, I mean, he's such an impactful, great player, and I think one of the reasons why he doesn't get as much attention, I mean, it's growing for sure, is because he does play in Florida, which isn't a very well-known market. If he played in any Canadian market, he'd be a superstar. He'd be elite. You know, he's, I believe, over a point-per-game producer. He's a great two-way defensive center. You know, the guy has accomplished a lot. Now, you know, how will they do in the playoffs and what impact will he make? That's going to be a big question. I mean, he was pretty impactful last year, but it wasn't enough to get him over the hump to get past Tampa Bay, which of course ended up winning the cup. But again, you wonder to yourself, what can this man not do? And he works on his game. He works on all the little fine details. And that's what it takes for you to be an elite player, like a Crosby. And I'm sure he alludes to Crosby being what it is. Not to mention, you know, he plays with some pretty elite company, you know, with Barkov, with Bennett, you know, Duclair, things like that. So, you know, he makes all the players around him better. But your thoughts?
Well, okay, so the only thing I'm going to kind of be a little different thought here, and it's not a thought, it's actually calling out my brother in crime here. He actually called him a center. He's a left wing. So just again shows you Pavel knows absolutely nothing about hockey. I think it was a slip, a Freudian slip. Anyway, Jonathan Huberto. Now this is why I wanted to talk about him. I did not catch this until just this morning. He has tied for most assists by a left wing in NHL history at 70 assists for a left wing. The record is about to be set by Jonathan Huberto. I want you to think about this. Now, on top of that, he took, and I think this will help some of you guys who have developing players, he took 6 seasons to become more than a point per game player. He went 6 seasons, and it wasn't until his 7th season he got more than that. And now he's going into his 4th season at a point per game. And it's amazing. This guy's been in the league for now 10 years. This is his decade. Yep. He's been around. And the people that he's sitting with at the top is Matt Naslin, Joe Juno, which was a one-time wonder, Kevin Stevens, which a lot of Penn fans remember him, and Bruins fans. He's better than Mark Messier. He's been better than Panarin or even the great Luc Robitaille of the Los Angeles Kings. I mean, enjoy it, folks. You are looking at one of the best left wingers in the NHL to ever play the game of hockey. And so, Florida, appreciate this boy because you may never see another left wing play like this again.
Well, now you're just disheartening all Panther fans. You're saying they have no prospects down the line that can be better than him? Come on.
Okay, let's go to another player I want to talk about. Roman Yossi, you were bringing up. Talk to us about that 100-point season you're talking about he's on schedule for, and then I want to bring something else up.
Well, I mean, he's having a career year, you know, on a team that's not really known for a lot of superstars. And a lot of people, again, thought Nashville would kind of be in the mix for the playoffs, but not really, you know. And yet they're really fighting up there in the top 3, you know, in the Central, which is a dogfight. Yeah. You know, hasn't been done in a very long time, but he's been producing. I think he's over at 60 plus assists alone, you know, and primary assists. And I know that there could be a discussion about if a primary assist is only valid or if secondary assists are valid. I mean, we can have that debate. And I think, secondary assists matter because that's how the play started, right? It's not just one pass,
Exactly.
Sometimes you need a few. So, Roman Yossi is having a career year. He's a captain. He's a leader, just like some of the others on the board that you've mentioned. And, I could see him potentially winning the Norris this year just because of what he put up. Not to take away from what Kayle Mccarr has done, what Hedman continues to do. Adam Fox being in that conversation, of course, as you mentioned earlier, and a few other defensemen that are worthy of note. But, of course, that's the top echelon of defensive defensemen. And he can put up points, and he can play, and he's smart. And, again, Kayle Mccarr plays with superstars. Roman Yossi, I don't want to take away from some of the players like Benning that he plays with, but,
Well, this is what I'd like fans to look at. Roman Yossi's in his 11th season because he didn't come into the NHL right away. And he is 31 years of age. Show me another guy that's on, where at least if he makes 100 points, who at 31 years old is scoring 100 points. I know, maybe the goals are not as high, but he's got the assists. And like you said, especially from the back end, right? And I know the talks about Kayle Mccarr. Mccarr is incredible. I got him right behind me, man. Kayle Mccarr. The guy is incredible. He's from my area out here in Alberta. I love the guy, but he is a different kind of defenseman. Truly, Roman Yossi is a defensive defenseman who knows how to score, who knows how to put up offense, and so let me ask you a question.
All
Would
right.
Nashville be in this playoff spot if it was not for Roman Yossi?
I don't think so.
Okay, so now, fans, you ready? We'll talk more about this in the weeks ahead, but let's talk about Roman Yossi, not just for the Norris, but for the Hart Trophy, for the most valuable person to their team in the NHL. Remember the rule. It's not who's the most skilled, who scores the most. It's who is the most valuable to his team. I think we can basically say between McDavid and Draisaitl, they're kind of canceling each other out. So he's up against guys like Huberto. He's up against guys like McKinnon. So who he competes against, I would say take Roman Yossi out, and you might have a team that's well out of the playoffs.
Very true. Although the one person that I consider very, very high on my Hart Trophy list is Igor Shesterkin for the Rangers, because he is playing unreal. You alluded to him a few weeks ago in terms of his save percentage and goals against, so check out that episode. And I think he's running away with it just because I know rarely goalies don't get it, and he may just win the best night because he's having that kind of year. But he really is just making that team better. Now, Roman Yossi, again, there's not a star-studded lineup in Nashville, but John Hines has made that team very relevant and strong. And again, like Boston, it's a structure system, and they know how to play it, and they get good goaltending, if not great, from Yossi Saros, who, again, I thought wouldn't be able to fill in because of his size. He's a smaller goalie than your typical style goalie. And Pekka Rinne was, those are big shoes to fill. And congrats on him having his number retired. But really, there's not a lot. And they did get rid of, Ellis last summer, and I thought that they'd take a bit of a hit there. But, of course, Ellis has been injured predominantly. And, I know Philly has struggled, and they may be out of the playoffs by the end of tomorrow. So, again,
I think they're done. I think they're out, actually. They've been officially eliminated.
Right. So, again, they got rid of Ellis, and I thought that would take a hit, but it hasn't. They still have Ekholm. They still have I can't remember. I know Benning, and I can't remember if it was Sissons. I think he's a forward, but there's one other defenseman that it's not coming to my mind, but also a great player. Again, I know nothing, Evan. The red paddle.
Yeah,
the
you
red
guys
paddle is being wrong.
You guys noticed there. He caught himself, and he caught himself quick. I was just
thinking of all the players. There's so many.
Yeah, no, exactly. And you have to forgive us, man. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of players, and some of these we're just doing off of the cuff. So we totally understand why our insider trader boys make mistakes.
Fabro, who's been
there you go.
underrated.
Yeah, Fabro. Yeah, Fabro. Okay, one last player that I want to talk about before we start talking more around teams and some other news around around the hockey world is another player that I think is up for a trophy as well this year. And I am going to actually say that Pavel has been a big supporter of this player. I did not like this player last year. I did not see them coming through well. And that's Jack Hughes of the New Jersey Devils. This guy's ability to avoid taking penalties is so incredible while being above average point per game player and no penalty minutes with over 20 games played. I mean, he is the only, out of no penalty minutes, having minimum of 20 games played, he's the only superstar player, star player, that is able to get a point per game average and still have, this guy is the Southgate winner this year, to me, hands down. How could you argue that?
Well, Matthews is making a run for it. He's making a case for himself to be potentially voted, but I agree. I love it when you're telling me I'm completely right, because I know nothing about hockey, but I know Jack Hughes and the New Jersey Devils, so I'll take it. I'll take the compliment. That's why you're wearing the number one hat. Number one fan right over here. Thank you. But he's been dynamite. He makes highlight reel plays, and New Jersey has struggled because they always make a big splash in the offseason, and yet they struggle to make the playoffs, and it's been another year of disappointment after, they signed the big Dougie Hamilton and whatnot. So, watching Jack Hughes play is electric. I think he had a goal earlier in the season where he scored an overtime winner. You guys can correct me on which game it was. And he ended up throwing his stick into the audience, which turned out to be someone that I know who knows the friend of that person who caught that stick. So that was pretty cool.
No way.
If you watch that thing, right? Yeah. And I know that people would say that that's not very hockey-like, but I think it was pretty cool. So I like what he's done. I mean, to not get a penalty in today's day and age with everything that happens with the hooking, the cross-checking, the slashing, trying to lift the stick potentially, awkward body, whatever it may be, running into the goalie. There's so many plays. You're playing on ice. It's anything could happen. But I agree that he's electric, and he definitely will garner some Selkie votes.
Well, so I will say, so Austin Matthews, he's actually had 7 penalties, so he's got 14 minutes. It's not a lot, so and the fact of he's probably going to win the Rocket Richard Trophy, probably with the most goals.
2 suspensions. Oh, come on, he's not going to win the Rocket Richard.
Oh, come on,
Leon.
No.
And, you know what? No. Think about Mr. Chris Kreider out in New York, who's I think got 44, 45 goals, mostly on the power play, but hey, they don't care how, they just care how many.
Hey, we're going to talk about Eugene Melnyk, who just passed away. Before we do, I just want to make mention, there was a Zucker trade the other year with Pittsburgh. There was a defenseman, just to keep an eye opener for those of you that like following in the Minnesota Wild. If you take a look at my partner behind you, you can see the Minnesota Wild. He had no idea I was going to bring this to attention. But Calen...
I have no idea what you're doing half the time, so...
Calen Addison. Remember that name. Calen Addison. Go look it up. People in the organization talk about Rossi and Boldy in their system, but they rarely look at Calen Addison. He is nearly a point per game in the AHL. It was a great find, and I believe it was a sucker trade that they thought they were getting something in the Zucker deal, and I think Pittsburgh lost out on this. This is a great ad that I thought was not going anywhere. So good on the Wild, man. They develop players well.
Yeah, they have a good farm system there, so it's pretty impressive.
Let's talk about Eugene Melnyk.
So to get off our soapboxes of who's amazing and who's elite, we do want to acknowledge another great giant that we've lost. Eugene Melnyk, owner of the Ottawa Senators. Some chaotic conversations and media presence. He has passed away. So we wish his family our best. Our thoughts, condolences, and prayers. Yeah. It's never easy to lose a loved one, a family member, a friend, someone close. He has done a lot for that franchise. albeit, there's still some struggles now, filling Canadian Tire Arena and, being outside the city and all that stuff going on. He was able to go to the Stanley Cup Finals, against Anaheim, so that was a big thing. He went to the, Eastern Conference Final versus Pittsburgh in 2016, starting at 17 when, Pittsburgh ended up winning in double overtime, and that was a big thing. Yeah. He saved that franchise. There was a lot of questions about what was going to happen to Ottawa. Would they move, at the time, like we do about Arizona now?
Yeah.
I think for now it's stabilized in the market. Certainly they could use a new arena, and there's definitely going to be some questions moving forward as to who will take over. But I'm sure it'll be in good hands. And go ahead.
Yeah. So, I do want to say, there's a lot of talk that comes about different owners and how they manage the game. And, of course, with their anyone passing, like Pavel said, our hearts go out to the family and the loved ones and close friends. But I want to make mention and just get it out there. A lot of people believed he was a terrible man. He wasn't good with his players. His former player, Danny Heatley, who went through a lot of his own issues himself. It's a whole story you can go in and find. He considered, so Danny Heatley considered Eugene his second father. He even tweeted it out this week. And Erik Karlsson, everyone thought there was this big blow up. I mean, he sent flowers after Erik Karlsson was traded. When his kids were born, he sent them to San Jose, made sure when his kids were born that he sent them flowers. There was more made out of a lot of this stuff than we actually think, just because some media or someone's talking like us or, and we think we heard something. Don't believe all those stories. He may not. This is my opinion. He probably was too involved on the team on hockey decisions, but as a person, you're not finding a lot of people really speaking ill of him at this time. And there's a reason, not just because he's passed, but because it sounds like he was actually a pretty good guy.
100%. And it's no easy way to transition from this, but to move it to more of a lighter note. I was downtown today, and I did pass by former GM of the Habs, Mark Bergevin, wearing a beautiful green suit, and I tried waving and saying hello, but clearly I'm not famous enough. So you guys need to pump me up. You got to boost those numbers that we have. You got to keep liking, sharing, subscribing, getting on our YouTube channel, getting on our Facebook, commenting, because we need more follows so that I can go up to GMs and actually have an honest conversation and get them on the show. But it didn't work.
It didn't work.
So I thought to myself, well, that sucks. I even tried in French.
So it's been a bad week for you because not only you tried French, I just got that. I can't imagine the French you used. Okay, but it's been a bad week because you were just saying before we went on the show, someone stole your hockey net too.
Oh yeah, So I was trying to get a hockey net out to Johnny Grant, who's been on a previous show, who organizes ball hockey here in Edmonton. And as I go into my backyard, I look and my hockey net for ball hockey is missing, and this is a regular size rink for ice hockey. And for whatever reason, it's gone. So somebody took the trouble of walking in my backyard, lifting that thing because it had some, weight, and taking it out and leaving it. So I hope they're having at least a good time and playing well, life goes on.
Well, you know what? Now I'm wondering, is it possible that the city of Quebec City could have taken it? Because a French report came out that the NHL approached them. Don't you like how my lead in here? On how the Quebec government, which was the finance minister, to play 5 home games for the Sens. I want you to remember, this goes back to Melnick, was involved over at this point in time about playing games. And so now there's another, they're kind of shaving this off because right now Quebec City is talking with Ottawa to host the World Junior Championships. So there's talk about that, the 2023 World Junior Championships between Ottawa and Quebec City. But I'd like to go ahead and say something here. A lot of people are saying, well, move the Arizona. The Arizona franchise will not go east. I'm just telling you now. If anything ever happens, it's in the West. They finally have an East-West split where it's exact amount of teams, and they're not changing that for anything. But I will say The Islanders went there when they were kind of debating on places. They're an Eastern team. I really feel like Quebec City gets used by the NHL and Commissioner Gary Bettman. And so the only way team, if you get potentially Quebec City, if you get a chance to host, you need to pack that stadium, standing room only. And here's why. Toronto wanted to be in the NFL so often. But listen, if you want to get in the NFL, you better fill the stadium when you host the Bills and have games there. They couldn't sell out their stadiums. And so you got to change how you do things by being and getting all the fans and supporting that, having people outside of those arenas. I remember Saskatoon, they talked about how they want to get a hockey team. Man, you got to fill, even a preseason game, you got to fill the stadium if you want a team so that you can show that you got a lot of fans.
Well, that's a bit of an old man rant there. The only thing I'm going to clarify you on is make sure you go to the right stadium. You know, you're not just ending up at the Canadian Tire and not the actual center in Ottawa, but the one in your backyard in the hockey section where you think some kids are just playing hockey stick just because you've lost your mind.
Well, hey, I was going to say, I actually think this was a ploy to try and get a new arena. That's what I think, because they're out in Canada with Ottawa, with the Canadian Tire Center, and they want to get into Ottawa. And so I can't, Ottawa, you know, you also get out there, support your team, man. Get out there, support your team, because you don't want to miss out. There's too many people that are in waiting now. So, hey, before we just get to a little bit in the playoffs, I just want to give a quick update in the Canadian Hockey League. For those that follow, there's Junior Leagues, there's United States Hockey League. Of course, there's NCAA. By the way, the final Frozen Four in the NCAA, if you can look it up. I just don't have time right now to give you all the specific directions. Look it up. See if you can watch a game. Catch it on YouTube. Check the highlights. There's some good teams playing right now. There's some players that have been drafted. They're prospects for some of your NHL teams. But anyway, listen to this. The Western Hockey League, which is in the western part of Canada and has some of the northeastern teams, so that includes down in like the Portland team, the Seattle Thunderbirds, all those teams, Everett Silvertips. The WHL, for the first time in 37 years, has six 16-year-olds who have eclipsed the 50-point mark in a single season. There is a ton of young talent coming out in the WHL. And, of course, you all know the number one prospect right now for the 2023 draft being Connor Bedard. I want you also to pay attention to a guy in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. That's in the far east of Canada. He is a defenseman. His name is Miguel Tournier. I'm saying that right. I think I am. But he has 68 points. 68 points in 49 games. This guy is eligible for this year's draft. He's ranked quite late, so he's probably a third-round draft. I can see this guy actually getting into the second round. So keep your eyes on Miguel Tournier. I just keep saying it because I think I'm pretty good at it. And then lastly, the OHL, top defense prospect for 22 NHL draft. Again, we talked about Russian prospects. Will they take them? My opinion is if they're playing already in the CHL, it's going to be a better chance. But 18-year-old, and his name is Mintikov, Pavel Mintikov. You like that?
Beauty. What a gorgeous name. Probably a beautiful player. And probably plays center and left wing.
He's 6'2", 192. How close are you to that?
Well, let's just say the height matches. The weight doesn't.
Okay, man, let's wrap up the show. We got about 8 to 10 minutes. We can sit and talk about what's happening in the playoff preparation. We know the East is pretty much settled. We just don't know the order. But the West is still throw it up in the air, man.
It's a gong show. There's still a lot of teams competing in the West, specifically in the Pacific, but also a bit of the Central, you know, and you still got Nashville, which we talked about, Winnipeg potentially competing, Dallas, who's trying to fight to stay in it, as well as Vegas, you know, who's They won a few in the last little bit and getting some bodies back, but they're still struggling. Edmonton's still in that mix. Calgary looks like it's going to probably take away first place in the Pacific, which is impressive, but you still have Vancouver kind of clawing away, albeit their chances are very slim. They guess, there's still hope, a dash of hope. So I don't want to ruin Vancouver Canucks fans, optimism if they have any, and so Colorado's still up there. Minnesota's still fighting. They went through a bit of a rough stretch for a bit there. LA is still in the competition, albeit they have a lot of injuries. So, and a lot of these teams are playing within against one another. So, in terms of within their own division or central. And so it'll be interesting, exciting hockey. I think we're slowly starting to see it in some of the games, playoff style hockey. Yeah. And I think we're getting ready for the big show because I honestly believe this is going to be one of the most electric, exciting, and fun hockey playoffs that I've watched in a long time.
Well, even for the season end for the West, right?
Yes.
With what's going on. Okay, so let's do kind of a breakdown. You guys are looking at your teams. So let's kind of look at the teams that are all kind of throwing them up in the air. So we'll take, as you were talking about, Nashville, LA, Edmonton, Dallas, Vegas, Winnipeg, and a long shot, Vancouver. So they're all potentially kind of still in there. What's the best percentage? How many games do you think, like about a 650 winning percentage, 850, 550? Most teams, if you get 670 winning percentage, that's really, really good.
I think it's about that, even though that's a high number. Yeah. I think Jason Gregor posted this recently on his Facebook feed about what each team needs to win in order to end up in third in the Pacific, and what that would look like. I think you have to have at least a 650 in order to compete and get into at least the playoff spot. 500's not going to do it, even for a wild card. And I'm sorry, there's just too much competition, especially since the top is kind of settled with Calgary, Colorado, and maybe I will say Minnesota kind of being on top there. Everyone else, it's a dogfight.
So, and you're right. So Jason Gregor, when he talked about, he was focusing on a 95-point season also. So 95 kind of gets you in the playoffs. We're not even talking about where exactly they finish and who they play. We'll get into that as the weeks get closer. But if you think about it, Nashville can still make it, win 7 games, lose 8, and only tie 1. And they're still going to make it. So let's just call Nashville in, right? LA only has to win 7 and lose 7. So that includes whatever happens here tonight here, guys. Let's keep it quiet. Shh. I haven't got a chance to watch yet. Okay, Edmonton. Edmonton only has to win 8 and lose 7, and they get the 95 point. They're in. So I'm going to say Nashville, LA, and Edmonton are in. Okay, this is disheartening. Dallas. To get 95 points, Dallas has to win 10, and they can lose 8. I know last week I made a prediction. I'm worried I'm going to have to now probably eat crow, because Dallas looks like they'll make it when I'm doing just the plain old math here.
Told you.
Yeah, you told me. I know. Just shut up. I don't want to hear about it. Vegas. But Vegas, if they want to make it, they need to win 9, can only lose 4, and with 1 overtime. Winnipeg is really close. They got to win 10, 4, and 1. So I'm going to call Winnipeg out of that. I'm going to now take Vegas out. I think Vegas is done. And I'm going to look at Vancouver. They got to go 11-3. They're not going 11-3, guys. And so basically you take Vegas, Winnipeg, and Vancouver out of that, and I think you pretty much got your teams. So it looks like we will have 5 teams from the Central probably in the playoffs.
Most likely. And to also note is that a lot of these teams, like I said a little bit earlier, play one another. So that's a big factor. That's why I'm saying it's going to be exciting hockey for the next little bit. Yeah. And you want to make sure that you're also healthy and ready to go for the first round of the playoffs, right? So, it's going to be tough, especially with, some of the big key pieces for some of these teams missing, so.
Yeah, exactly. So, hey, you guys commented last week. I had a bet about Carolina and Pittsburgh. If they meet up in the playoffs, who's going to win? I said that I needed a handicap and all my handicap is that if they face off, long as Pittsburgh doesn't lose one of their star players to injury, one of their top 6 or one of their top 4 defensemen. That's the only handicap I asked for. And I'll wager $20 on the line against Carolina because I do think Carolina doesn't have a big enough and strong enough team. I know you thought I said they were weaker. They're not weaker unless you mean strength, because I don't think they're a big team. I know you were saying Tervainen last week was big. I mean, the guy's 5'11", so I think I'm going to win this bet because you know absolutely nothing about hockey.
Very well. Okay, so virtual handshake for you. You might as well just give me $20 now instead because of the fact that you're going to lose this bet because you know nothing about hockey. I love Pittsburgh, but their record in the playoffs in the last 2 years is 0-7. So what are we talking about here? So my only handicap is that you can't base it on the goalie. Anything else I'm okay with if it means that you're losing one of your players, but injuries happen. But your goalie,
the goalie,
has to be your best player.
Come on, Tristan Jarry, man, that's all they got. They got nothing else behind Tristan Jarry to win. So.
Wow, someone has no faith in Casey DeSmith. You know, all Pittsburgh fans can at Evan because he clearly doesn't believe in your backup goaltender.
No, I don't believe in Casey Smith. I don't think he's the right goalie. They should have picked something up.
But I concede to your rules. But what are we going for? Is the first round like just to beat out the first round or what?
No. It's if they meet in the playoffs. If they meet, that's what we were talking about.
Meet, okay.
Yeah, if they meet up, who wins that series? I say Pittsburgh.
Well, I think Carolina's just going to be standing there waiting, looking at their clocks, and I think they're going to be waiting a long time because Pittsburgh's going to be out. They're going to be going golfing.
Yeah. So who do you think's going to match up first against Carolina or Florida? Whoever wins the first overall on that side, you think it's going to be Washington, or do you think it's going to be Toronto? Who do you think is going to make it in that side?
It's hard to say. I could see it being Washington again, but I could definitely see it maybe being Toronto or, whoever else falls from the Atlantic, because that's the thing, right? Like, it's so tough to call. So, maybe even Boston.
Okay, so, yeah, well, I'm as I'm looking, Boston's got 2 games in hand with 3 points above Washington. So right. I'm going to say 3 and 2. So let's just say they get half. They're 5 points up. I can't see that changing in about 14, 16 games. So I don't see where we're going. We got 90 points with Pittsburgh, so nothing's changing there. The only thing I could see dropping is Toronto. No, but they got 2 games in hand. Man,
what about the Rangers? Would they face them?
So the Rangers got 91 points with 1 more game in hand, so they got 7 more points in a game in hand. So looking at this, we basically are looking at Florida or Carolina against Washington in that first round. Washington is going to have a big job in front of them to take out either one of those guys.
Yeah, Washington. Yeah, that's an uphill battle right there.
Washington is going to take out the Carolina Hurricanes.
Ooh, that's a bold prediction. They've had history in the playoffs before, so
they do. That would be a good series. Series. And then maybe, just maybe, then you have Florida-Boston in the first round. Whoa.
That would be nasty. Like I'm saying, it's going to be a wild one. So why don't you guys let us know what ideal series you'd want to see in the first round of the playoffs? What team do you want to see face? Maybe it's one of your favorites. Maybe it's someone that you despise and you believe that the book should be thrown at them. But just comment below.
Okay. I'm commenting right now. So, Pavel, you stink at betting.
Can you spell that correctly?
All right, man. Well, hey, it's been another good show. You got any last-minute thoughts for this week?
No, just congrats to the Team Canada in soccer for making the World Cup for the first time in 36 years, as long as I've been alive. That's pretty cool, It only took me to live this long for them to show up. So, maybe you'll do the same in the next 36 years when I start.
Yeah, well, you got to actually be excited. It sounds like Italy's out of the World Cup. They didn't make it.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
Whoa, there's going to be some big changes happening. It's really nice to see a little bit more parity in the World Cup of soccer, seeing different teams in there. So,
however,
yes,
my country, I will still root for till the end of time, which is Polska, and they will go all the way and win.
Oh,
Just saying.
I thought you were talking about the Union of Pavel. You
Well,
had
yeah,
made your
that
own
too.
country. Anyone's got a name with Pavel, you were going rooting for them, whether they were Polish or whether they were Russian.
Name me a terrible Pavel. You can't, unless it's me.
All right, guys. Well, hey, we appreciate you. Follow us on ASAP, all our ASAP folks. Hey, guys, thanks for joining us here on Twitter, Facebook, on TPTV, Roku, wherever you're following us. Thank you very much. Definitely subscribe. Thank you to those of you who you love watching and listening to us on your radios in your vehicles, whether you're trucking or whether you're just getting home from work or you're heading to work. We want to say thank you for joining us. Yeah, no, I might have a hat, but I can't rap.
No, you're going to rap and say a word, whether you're trucking or, you guys can fill in the blank.